I'm Beverly Bozeman. Join me as I introduce you to the women who impact our communities and churches, first ladies, female pastors, and ministers. You will be enlightened and delighted. This is about her ministry. Hey, this is Beverly Bozeman, and welcome to another episode of About Her Ministry. And today I have the dynamic prophetess Tonya Dawson. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You are welcome. We are so glad to have you today, and you guys are really in for a treat. She's a dynamic lady. I met her sometime last year. We were both speaking at an event at a church, and she is just awesome with her testimony and just, awesome woman of God. And so today, I'm sure we're going to give you some more information, and you'll be enlightened and delighted. So I think you're actually the first prophetess that I've had on the show. So if you don't mind sharing with the people, what is the role of a prophetess?
Wow. So the main role would be to help catapult people to their destiny, turning those to God. Um, I have a strong passion to see people be all that God has created them to be, to fulfill their purpose in Him, to have deep relationship with God. And I believe that as a prophet, we're just not here to speak about your future.
Mhm.
And I tell people I'm not a psychic.
Right.
I'm not just here to tell you about futuristic things, although God will use us in that capacity. But my main goal is to see you achieve a better relationship with Him so that you can live a life that pleases God. So, we as prophets help to push you to that. We bring correction. That's
Mm-hmm.
why we're not very popular,
Mm-hmm.
because we will bring correction. I tell people all the time, I'm not a house car prophet, so if you're looking just for me to, tickle your fancy, so to speak, that's not what I'm here for. If you're wrong and the Lord tells me to speak and shine the light on that, that will I do. Because first I got to please Him. And in order to please Him, I have to speak the truth of whatever He gives me. So when anybody wants to talk with me, speak with me, counsel with me, I let them know I am going to get to the root of what's going on with you. We're going to shine the light on what's going on so that you can live better and be a better disciple, be a better person, be holy. Be holy. I believe as a prophet, you have to. It's no option. You have to live not only a life of discipline, but holiness, because if you don't, it will taint your hearing from God.
Mm-hmm.
It will taint your relationship with God. And we are oracles of God,
Mm-hmm.
and we speak what He says. And how can you hear clearly if you're not living a life
Right.
that's clean, that's pleasing to God? So you have to spend time with Him in order to hear His voice. It requires a lot of time away alone.
Mm-hmm.
I hear some people who even say that they just want to be a prophet, because they look at the gifts and they look at the glitz and the glamour. But I'm going to tell you, it is not a pretty lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a popular lifestyle. When you're a prophet, you're very unpopular. You're not liked. You're often misunderstood. And before I knew I was a prophet, I couldn't understand why I was often misunderstood. No matter how much I try to explain, I was constantly always trying to defend myself and, you know, explain why I do what I do or why I didn't do what I do. When at the end of the day, no matter what I say, no matter what I do, I'm going to be misunderstood. Um, as a prophet, we live very unusual lifestyles. I know my life is not what you would call normal. Um, Although it's kind of like I'm outgoing and not outgoing at the same time. you know, um, I spend a lot of time alone, and I had to grow to understand that it was because I needed to hear God. And just purification, you will go through constant moments of just being purified. Um, it's not easy. It is not easy. There's been many a times I wanted to say, Lord, thank you. I'm honored, but you can take this back. Like, God, here you go. Lord, I thank you. I am honored, but I don't want this. I don't want this mantle. The load is very heavy.
Yeah.
The load is very heavy because before you speak a word into someone's life, that word is going to be tried by the fire in you first.
That's right. You have to be first partaker of the word.
Absolutely. Every word that I have to deliver, every word that I have to speak, and I'm not just talking about in the pulpit, I mean just one-on-one. I've gone through something to that degree because it produces that pain, and that pressure produces the power that's needed when you speak the word of the Lord. I often tell other prophets that, may come to me for questions, and I say to them, listen, I had one young lady that oftentimes she was very shy, and she would say, she would tell someone else, go tell this person that the Lord said ABCD.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, you cannot do that unless he releases you to do that. Being a prophet, you have to be very precise, specific, wise in what you say, how you say it. You cannot change it up. You have to speak it how God tells you to speak it, in the tone he tells you to speak it in, the choice of words that you use. You cannot mix your own logic with the word that God has given you, because sometimes when you're hearing a word and you're getting ready to deliver that, you need to be asking a whole bunch of questions. How do you want me to say this? What do you want me to say? How, do I need to explain this? How do I explain this? Because we can often take what someone says and what the Lord says and then end up changing it into what we think he's meaning. And that can get you in trouble and also cause that person to be in a state of confusion. And it doesn't mean that you're not a true prophet or you're a false prophet, but it just means that you need to fine tune your gift. Because he's spoken things through me before that made no sense to me, but I had to say it the way he delivered it, but it made sense to that person. But I didn't dare try to shift it and change it up so that I could understand it and then deliver it, because it can change the whole content and the meaning of what God is saying. And it's very vital that you don't confuse people. And I mean, it's life or death when you're speaking out of your mouth. Right. And that's the other thing that I said to her. I said, you have the power and the anointing on you. That mantle rests on you to deliver that word. So it's not just what you say, but it's the power and the anointing that comes with what you say. So if you giving that message to another person to deliver to, that you got from the Lord, they don't have that mantle and that power that needs to go with that to cause deliverance and to cause the yokes to be destroyed. So therefore, they may get the message, but it doesn't have the same effect. They may get the message, but deliverance doesn't take place.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah, because I believe that whenever a prophet or a prophetess extends a word from God, it's like you said, it's not just for the future, but it has to have some type of effect right now, because what happens right now is going to ultimately affect their future.
Absolutely.
So let me ask you this. When did you know that you were a prophet?
The funny thing is, I received my calling back in 2000, to be exact. I actually started my minister training in 2000, but it was probably like in latter part of 98, 99, that the Lord called me into ministry. But he didn't release me to go forth to start my training until about a year, a little more over a year, before I started my training. And so going through my journey as a minister in training and developing my relationship with God, the gifts are already there, right? He already places everything in you. So, I oftentimes will give people a word, but never, ever thought about that I was a prophet. Never. And that's funny, but I just never thought about that. And be frankly honest with you, I was afraid of that office. So I was just not even eager to think that I was one. But the way that he, first of all, it's a calling. The office of a prophet is a calling, just like a pastor, just like being a minister. It's a calling. You don't just wake up and say, oh, I prophesy, so I'm a prophet. But I was ministering to a young lady that was another minister. And when we got off the phone, she says, thank you, prophet. And I got so upset. I said, do not call me that, because I understood the power of our words, right? I said, don't call me that. Don't call me that. Don't do that. Don't put labels on me prematurely. I don't want it. No, ma'am. No, thank you. When I got off the phone with her, when I tell you that my Father, the Lord God himself, spanked me so bad. And honestly, it's not anything deep. It was just that moment that he said, never deny who I've created you to be.
Oh my. Wow.
He said, you do not deny what I've placed in you and what I've called you to do. So he said, I called you to be a prophet to the nations. And I said, oh my gosh. And he said, but you wait on me before you walk in that office. Because I had to go through some training. I had to go through, I had to get to another place in God before he released me to walk in that office. And honestly, that was probably, I get my timelines. It was it was several years. It was several years. And how did I know that it was time? Because he said it, simply put. He said, I remember him speaking to me that when I would do events or anything, he said to me, you are no longer Minister Tonya. You are now Prophetess Tonya. I have now released you to walk in the office of a prophet. And then I, just started my journey and let my pastors know. And, that's what the Lord had spoken to me about my timing as far as walking into the office of a prophet.
Awesome. Okay. So, as you were speaking, I had this question that came up. Sometimes when people have positions in the church, especially such a high position or a high mantle, such as a prophet, they can tend to let that position or that title make them think that they are larger than life or bigger than some people. Have you had any encounters or dealings with prophets or prophetesses who have allowed the position or the notoriety to make them think that they're bigger than others and treat other people? Have you had any type of confrontations with people like that, of that caliber? And if so, how did you handle that? What did God allow to take place?
I've seen it from a distance, up close. I can't really say that me personally had an interaction. I mean, I've been around some, whether they were prophets or apostles, that you could feel that pride, arrogance. And so I haven't actually had to one-on-one deal with someone as far as like having a confrontation or anything like that, but just sometimes being around or in the midst of some where they didn't know who I was. So, they look down on you, and even just in conversation, they talk to you like you're not aware, I'm on this level, and I know that you're here. So let me try to bring you up here, and have no idea where I am in God, because that pride and that arrogance clouds your discernment, and you're in flesh, because if you're in the spirit, you can discern where someone is. As for me personally, because of that gift, and there's so many gifts that's intertwined with being a prophet, it's a fine line between being prideful and humble.
Mm-hmm.
And I always say, if you have to tell people that you're humble, you're probably not humble. It speaks for itself. But I consistently, and even before I ever knew I was a prophet, or, even once I knew I was and started walking the office, I always pray and ask God to keep me humble. I said, God, I want you to get the glory out of everything that I say, that I do. I want you to be glorified. When I speak, I don't want the people to see Tonya. I
Mm-hmm.
want them to see God. I want them to feel God. So much so that they forget I'm even standing before them.
Right.
And I think that when you can acknowledge that it's a fine line and it's easy to cross that line, that's where you can, kind of remain in a place of humility. Because when you say, oh, I'll never be like that, or, nah, I'm not prideful, or whatever. I mean, it's easy to get caught up in that, especially the way God uses prophets, the spiritual realm that we, tap into. And just like you say, the glitz and the glamour of it all that people see, oh, they told me that my address, or they told me my name, or they described somebody, it's very intriguing. But at the same token, it's still all about him. And it's about that person before you that needs healing, or the people that needs healing, that needs deliverance. So, like I said, I haven't too much had interaction where I've had to maybe correct somebody that was like that, or had a confrontation with that. But like I said, I have observed it from afar. Maybe someone I didn't, really know personally, but just was in the midst of it and see it. And I do pray for them.
Right.
I pray for them when I see that, because that's a dangerous ground to walk. And I told the Lord, I don't want to ever cross that line. I really, really, really don't. And even when people are coming to me and saying, oh man, you're so powerful this, and you laid these people out and this, that, I'm like, no, that was God that laid them out.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
But I don't get caught up into that. I mean, if you fall, you fall. I mean, if the Lord slays you that way, then so be it. If you standing still straight up, I don't have a problem with that. But, you just have to be careful, because when people see your gifts, they will put you on a pedestal, and you have to bring yourself right on back down and let them know in a nice way, but just let them know.
Yeah, you have to. I think that sometimes when people are put on pedestals like that, it's easy for them to get caught up in the hype of it, or in the celebration of it, to where it can cloud their judgment, and that can
Absolutely.
cause for them to fall, or say things like you had said earlier, say things that God has told them to say, but they kind of mix it up with their logic, or something that makes sense to them, so that they can sound more intriguing, or more
Mm-hmm.
fascinating, and just more captivating. But as you had said, that you had to say something that didn't make any sense to you, but it made perfect sense to the other person.
Absolutely.
So that's a way to kind of scramble it up, if you allow people to place you on those pedestals. So prophets and prophetesses have unique lives, as you said. So what is something, or some things that you've had to sacrifice in order to maintain your relationship with God as a prophet, or just in general for your mantle?
How many things?
Well, you can
I
name
would
one or
say,
two, or whatever's most significant.
I would say for me, and this is my journey, and a lot of people don't understand, but this is my journey. God moves me around. I'm now, back in Kinston, which is my hometown, which I vowed I would never move back home.
I know. I
I
said
said, no, 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 no. And it wasn't anything against being here per se, but, I was okay where I was. And so I have, I went to school in UNC in Greensboro. And I could say my plan for my life, go to college, get a job in my, major, and just live life.
yeah.
Mm-mm. He interrupted school, my jobs. I listen to people say, I've been on my job for 20 some years, 30 some years. Mm-mm. Because in the moving around, it's like I had to do an Abraham move. And he's like, pack up, move to South Carolina. didn't know anybody, didn't have a job there. But he said, you're going to move to South Carolina, which is actually where I got ordained, in South Carolina, and through Life Cathedral Ministries. It was Pastor Antonio Gathers, was my pastor then in South Carolina. And I met him at a restaurant. I met him in Greensboro at a restaurant. He was actually passing through, and stopped to have dinner. And I went in to have dinner, and he ended up prophesying to me. Never met him before, never seen him before. And the Lord said, that's going to be your pastor. So I just packed up and moved to South Carolina, and the Lord just opened doors. I mean, he allowed me to transfer my job. I got a place to stay, and I lived there for about 2 years. So I would say I had a lot of interruptions on my plans for life, even, we as women, we planned when we're going to get married, when we're going to have babies and all that kind of stuff. None of that happened.
Wow. He really did interrupt your life.
Completely. I do not live nothing like what I had expected or had planned to do.
He said, load up the truck and move to Beverly Hills.
Yes, he did. And then after that, he said, okay, now I want you to go back to Greensboro. Went back to Greensboro for a while, went back to my home church, which was Mount Zion Baptist Church in Greensboro. I was under Bishop George W. Brooks. Awesome man of God. I call my buddy. I told him, I don't care where I go, you will always be my spiritual father. I mean, because he really blessed my life. I mean, taught me, trained me up. I mean, I was there for years before I started my journey of moving around. And it was funny when I came back from South Carolina, he told me, he said, I knew you were going to do that. You're not going to stay in one place because of the ministry that's in you. You have too much in you.
Right.
So once I went back to Greensboro, then he moved me back here. And I tell you, I was kicking and screaming.
I can imagine.
And God has a way of really getting our attention, because he allowed me to lose my job that I was happy with, just so that I could really focus in and hear him say, I need you to move back home. And do you know, before I moved back home, they offered me my job back. And the one time in my life that I truly, truly wanted to disobey him, if I could just be honest, because I did not want to come. But I also understood that I suffer for righteousness.
Yeah.
I don't want to suffer for disobedience.
Oh, yeah.
I have enough suffering trying to do the right thing. So I don't want to suffer doing the wrong thing. So even when it came to dating, I couldn't date. I mean, it's just been many things. My life has been a sacrifice, that I had to do a lot of what I did not want to do for his name's sake.
Right. Yeah. That's, we're supposed to carry the cross on a regular basis, lay down our will for his, so that we can fulfill our destiny. So in the last few minutes that we have, I have two more questions. Well, one question, and then I'm going to want people to know about your ministry, your ladies ministry. Okay. If you could talk to one person in the Bible, from the Bible days, who would it be? If you could ask them a question, what would that question be?
That's a good question. That's a good question. I've never thought about it like that. Let's see. Job.
Oh, okay.
I would say Job, because I've often been compared to Job in a lot that I've gone through in my life, the pressures of life, the suffering. I would just love to hear the realness of how he really felt through the suffering. I know that he still trusted God in the process, which is what brought him to victory. But I want to know, how did you feel before you got to that place of victory, or before the Lord just blew your mind and giving you more than what you lost? What really was going on in your thought process? Did you have a moment where you questioned your beliefs? You questioned your relationship? Um, because I could tell Job that I did.
Mm.
So I would really just like to know his heart in all that he went through and how he really felt. And was it, and we can assume that it was the relationship that kept him, but just his explanation of how he got to that place of stability in his relationship to withstand all that he suffered and all that he lost.
Awesome. I love that. I love that because it makes you wonder, you know, what was really going through his mind. You know, people were ridiculing him and making fun of him, and he just had to make that type of sacrifice. So, we just have a few more minutes left, about maybe 2 or 3. Tell
Okay.
the people about your women's ministry.
Okay, so I have started a ministry called Lady Soul Sessions, and it's healing for the soul. Throughout my ministry, the Lord has always given me a heart for hurting women, for broken women, for women that need guidance, women that needs healing, guidance when it comes to relationships, whether it's in male to female or friendships, teaching women how to be ladies. I believe in this day and time, we've gotten so far away from that, and it's almost abnormal to be a lady. It's abnormal to be classy. It's actually normal to be ratchet. Everybody wants to get in public and twerk. I can't tell you how that bothers me, but that's a whole nother show. So So I knew, I used to always say I would just love to get a bunch of women in the room and just talk to them, teach them. And so the Lord had me to start Lady Soul Sessions while I was here. And just so happens the Salvation Army was looking for a volunteer to mentor women and to pour into the community. Right now we're only doing the adult women, probably I think around 19, 20 and up, that can come. Anybody can come from all walks of life, from any church. I do host it there at the Salvation Army every Saturday at 11 o'clock. Not every Saturday, I'm sorry. Once a month, on Saturday at 11 a.m. And it's not very long, but I wanted to create something beyond church, so that people can have an opportunity to talk, to have group therapy, to be inspired, encouraged by your other, sisters, to uplift one another, also for prayer, for deliverance, for healing. And so it's just a moment where we, like sisters, get together and we chat. I have everyone sit in a circle, and I don't want to just preach to them because they can get that at church, they can get that at Bible study, but I want them to have the opportunity to feel free enough, safe enough to share their issues, so that the Lord can use me to pour into them, or maybe some other ladies in there will pour into them, share their testimonies. I don't typically record it because we do talk about any and everything, very personal issues. So I do have pictures. I have a group page on Facebook called Lady Soul Sessions, and anyone can send me an invite. I can, accept them into the group with hopes that they would want to come out and be a part of it. My email is ladysessions20@gmail.com. You can contact me there, message me on Facebook. My name is just Tonya Dawson, nothing fancy. You can inbox me, and just give them and be able to provide other resources, like if they need more in-depth counseling. I have some resources to refer them, as well as they can have one-on-one with me. But we have a good time and just get together and love